My sister feigned cancer to sabotage my Ivy League dreams, so I revealed her deception and watched her world crumble. 2 years on, she's at my door weeping, asking if we can ever be sisters again. The pink, glittery bike, a 12th birthday dream, lay shattered in the road, its frame twisted under the truck's indifferent weight. That was the day my childhood ended, not with a whimper, but with the sickening crunch of metal. Growing up, I just wanted to be best friends with Sasha, my older sister. I really did. I looked up to her so much, mimicking her every move. If she bought a new shirt, I try to find something similar, hanging it in my closet like a badge of honor. When she picked up a new hobby, whether it was running track or dance, I'd be right there, signing up for classes the next week. I wasn't trying to steal her thunder. I was trying to be with her, to share her world. But she never saw it that way. To Sasha, I wasn't a little sister. I was her shadow, her rival, her opponent number one. Every time she'd come home, beaming, an award clutched in her hand, a shiny trophy for first place, a medal clinking against her chest, I'd be the first one she sought out. Not to share the joy, but to taunt. Bet you couldn't do this, could you? She'd sneer, waving the award right in my face, the medal cold and gleaming. My stomach would tighten, but I'd force a smile, wrapping my arms around her in a hug so tight it almost hurt. "Oh, Sasha, I'm so incredibly happy for you." I'd gush, hoping, foolishly, that my genuine excitement would melt away her competitive edge. It never did. Instead, she'd shove me away, sometimes so hard that my entire body would lose balance and I'd tumble to the floor, the wind knocked out of me. The sting of the fall was nothing compared to the sting of rejection. But that shattered bike was different. It wasn't just a toy. It was a symbol, a turning point. My parents had gotten it for me for my 12th birthday, a bright pink, glitter-covered bike, exactly like the one Sasha had always wanted but never got. The moment I unboxed it, my heart swelled with a desperate, naive hope. This was it. This was my chance to finally connect with her. I raced upstairs, the sound of my bare feet thudding against the carpet, and hammered on her bedroom door. When she finally emerged, I practically dragged her to the backyard, my voice bubbling with excitement. "Look," I exclaimed, pointing to the shimmering bike. "Do you want to be the first one to ride it?" A smirk, slow and chilling, spread across her face. "Sure," she said, her eyes glinting with an unreadable malice. She told me she wanted to take it on the road, and at 16, I figured she was old enough to be responsible. I watched, a smile still plastered on my face, as she straddled the bike. But instead of pedaling off, her eyes locked with mine. There was no joy, no sisterly affection, just a cold, calculating gleam. Then, with a sudden, violent heave, she threw my brand-new bike into the street, right as a massive truck rumbled by. The screech of tires, the horrifying crunch of metal, the sight of shattered plastic and twisted chrome, it all slammed into me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat, my heart literally aching in my chest. In that instant, all my childish hopes and dreams evaporated. My childhood, or what was left of it, ended right there. I vowed then and there to never again share an achievement, a joy, or even a simple update about my life with her. Here's the thing about family dynamics, especially when there's a strong undercurrent of unresolved sibling rivalry. It often morphs beyond simple competition into something deeply damaging. In such relationships, the constant need to win can become a central driving force for one sibling, overshadowing any genuine affection or desire for connection. What I was experiencing was a classic case of sibling de-identification, where Sasha actively sought to differentiate herself from me, not by building her own identity positively, but by undermining mine. My attempts at connection were perceived as threats, fueled by her need to maintain superiority, a dynamic often exacerbated by how parents unconsciously reward or react to these competitive behaviors. Life became a strange dance of avoidance. I learned to keep my successes locked away, a secret garden no one, especially not Sasha, was allowed to enter. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. When I was 14, I won first place at the regional cross-country championships. Sasha hadn't left for college yet, and my parents, bless their hearts, couldn't contain their excitement. I heard their hushed, proud whispers carrying through the thin walls, and I knew she'd overheard. My stomach churned. This was a direct violation of my sacred vow. To my utter surprise, instead of flipping out, she asked if she could come to my awards ceremony. A tiny spark of hope, foolishly, ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally changing. Maybe she wanted to rebuild something. I enthusiastically said yes. The big day arrived, the gymnasium buzzing with nervous energy and the smell of stale popcorn. The coach began announcing the winners, starting from lowest to highest. My heart hammered against my ribs, a drumbeat of anticipation. But he never called my name. Just as my turn was about to come, Sasha, with a dramatic gasp that cut through the murmur of the crowd, collapsed onto the floor. Not a quiet slump, mind you, but a full, theatrical heap. Everyone turned, a wave of concern washing over the faces of parents and students alike. My family rushed to her side, their voices laced with worry. She lay there, limp, until the wail of ambulance sirens pierced the air outside. Then, as if on cue, she jolted upright. "Oh, sorry, everyone," she announced, her voice surprisingly clear. "I just didn't eat enough food today." Everyone marveled at her quick recovery, relieved smiles replacing their worried frowns. I just rolled my eyes, a bitter taste filling my mouth. The weight of her manipulation pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. From that day forward, I kept everything shrouded in secrecy. Not just from Sasha, but from my parents, from my entire family. It made life lonelier, isolating. The urge to run to my mom and dad with good news, to share a triumph, was a powerful one, and it took everything I had to kill that desire. What I found next changed everything. Fast forward to when I was 17. The acceptance letter from my dream Ivy League university arrived, a thick envelope bursting with promise. My parents found it before I did. When I walked through the front door, my mom's voice echoed with unrestrained joy. "Honey, we are so proud of you." Before I could even fully process it, they were snapping photos, that glossy acceptance letter plastered against my chest, ready to parade my success all over their social media. For the first time in years, I let them be happy for me. I figured, foolishly once more, that Sasha couldn't possibly ruin this. But again, I was wrong. The next morning, the soft light of dawn was shattered by the sound of my parents barging into my room. The air crackled with a frantic energy. They began roughly shoving my clothes, my books, my carefully curated belongings into large black bin bags. My mom's voice was shaking, tears glistening in my dad's eyes, as they delivered the devastating news. "Your sister has just been diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. She'll need one room for her stuff and one to sleep in." A cold dread settled in my stomach. The words were heavy, but the alarm bells ringing in my head were deafening. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that she was faking it. I just needed some sort of proof. Sasha came home later that day. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk played on her lips as she surveyed the upheaval in my room. Her head was completely bald. Funny, I remembered seeing a photo on her social media story just a month prior, her hair blowing in the wind, a vibrant, blonde cascade. Yet, she stumbled into the house, playing the part of the gravely ill patient, collapsing onto the couch and claiming the cancer was tiring her out. The lie felt like a physical presence in the house, thick and suffocating. That night, I cooked her favorite meal, a strategy to lull her into a false sense of security. After 2 weeks of me sleeping on the couch, watching her perform this elaborate charade, Sasha announced a party. A celebration, she called it, to commemorate her own bravery. She invited everyone we knew, even some girls from my class. Perfect, I thought, a plan slowly forming in the darkness of my mind. Halfway through the party, the house full of sympathetic murmurs and forced smiles, I tapped my Fanta glass with a fork. The clinking sound cut through the chatter. "Sasha," I called out, my voice laced with a sweetness I didn't feel. "Make a speech. We're all so proud of you." She immediately launched into a speech, one I had heard her practicing, word for word, dozens of times in front of the bathroom mirror late at night. She was halfway through her performance, fake tears welling in her eyes, when I walked up to her, my own heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I wrapped her in a hug, and just as I was about to pull away, my fingers found the edge of the bald cap. With a swift, deliberate motion, I peeled it off. Her long, blonde hair, healthy and vibrant, cascaded down to her waist. Sasha shrieked. My mom gasped, a sound so sharp and sudden I thought her lungs might shrivel. As everyone stood frozen, processing the impossible sight, I turned on the TV, cranking the volume to full. There, for all to see, was a clip I had secretly captured. Sasha, practicing her tearful speech in the bathroom mirror, her voice clear and strong, her hair flowing freely. Instead of finally facing the music, she stormed out of the house, a furious blur, and peeled away in her car, the tires squealing in protest. I just walked upstairs, leaving my parents to deal with the awkward goodbyes of their bewildered guests. The air in the house was thick with unspoken accusations and a profound, echoing silence. The next morning, the silence was shattered. I woke to the stinging slap of my mom's hand across my face. My cheek burned, a physical manifestation of her fury. "How could you have embarrassed Sasha like that?" she spat, her voice trembling. "While she's battling with cancer?" I just stared at her, unable to form words. She went on, explaining that Sasha had told them I'd ripped out her hair extensions, expensive, realistic ones she'd bought, because she didn't want anyone to pity her for being bald. And, of course, she couldn't flaunt her wealth by admitting she could afford such extravagant extensions. I couldn't believe my parents swallowed that story, hook, line, and sinker. They truly believed their daughter, supposedly dying of cancer, had secret hair extensions that I, the cruel, jealous sister, had ripped off. The sheer absurdity of it made my head spin. What I was witnessing was a profound example of cognitive dissonance and enabling behavior. My parents, deeply invested in the narrative of Sasha as their struggling, sick child, found it incredibly difficult to reconcile that image with the evidence of her blatant manipulation. To protect their emotional investment and avoid the painful truth, they rationalized Sasha's lies, even the most outrageous ones, and projected blame onto me. This created an environment where Sasha's pathological behavior was not only permitted but inadvertently encouraged, further entrenching her destructive patterns. Over the next few days, things only spiraled further down. Sasha returned, not with an apology, but with a stack of medical documents. Appointment cards, test results, even a treatment schedule. I still don't know how she faked them, but they looked chillingly real. Authentic letterheads, official-looking stamps. Then she began her campaign of psychological warfare. She started telling my parents I was emotionally abusive, that I had been bullying her about her cancer diagnosis, that I was jealous of the attention she was getting and trying to make everything about my college acceptance. My parents, already deeply entrenched in her fabricated reality, scheduled an emergency therapy appointment for me. They told the therapist I was showing signs of narcissistic personality disorder and needed immediate help. The therapist seemed skeptical at first, but my parents' conviction was so strong, so absolute, that she agreed to see me twice a week. Those sessions were brutal. I sat there, my insides churning with suppressed anger and frustration, while this woman, whose job it was to help, asked me why I felt the need to hurt my sick sister. She wanted to explore my jealousy issues and my need for attention. Every attempt I made to explain Sasha's lies, to present the truth, only made me look worse. The therapist would just nod, her pen scratching against her pad, meticulously documenting my denial. Meanwhile, Sasha completely took over the house. She'd host these little gatherings, extended family members arriving with casseroles and concerned expressions, all there to visit the brave cancer patient. She'd make these subtle, insidious comments about how hard it was having an unsupportive sister. Nothing overt, nothing you could point to and call her out on, but just enough to poison everyone's perception of me. It was a slow, calculated erosion of my character, and I felt utterly helpless. This was a betrayal that cut to the bone. But Sasha had another card up her sleeve, and I had no idea then how much deeper the rabbit hole went. I started meticulously documenting everything. Every time she slipped up, every contradiction in her story, I wrote it down. When she claimed to have chemo on Tuesday but posted selfies at the mall, I screenshotted them, time-stamped and saved. I was building a case, a fortress of truth, but I desperately needed something concrete, something undeniable. One night, I came home late from school, exhausted from working on a big project in the library. I opened my laptop, its familiar weight of comfort in my hands, only to find the screen shattered, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across the display. It wouldn't turn on. All my school work, years of essays, projects, research gone. The keyboard was bent, like someone had stomped on it with deliberate force. I found Sasha in the kitchen, casually making tea, a placid smile on her face. Technology can be so unreliable, can't it? She mused, her eyes holding that chilling, knowing gleam. Then, with a sugary sweetness that made my skin crawl, she asked if I'd backed up my college application materials. The way she said it, the barely concealed satisfaction in her voice, made it clear she knew exactly what had happened. The next week was a blur of frantic effort. I spent every waking moment rebuilding everything from memory, begging teachers for extensions. Some believed me, their faces etched with sympathy, but others, influenced by the whispers and rumors, clearly thought I was just making excuses. My grades, once a source of pride, started slipping under the immense stress. At school, the whispers grew louder. Rumors spread like wildfire. I had attacked my cancer-stricken sister at her own support party. People I'd known for years started avoiding me in the halls, their gazes sliding away. My lunch table, once bustling with friends, slowly emptied until I was eating alone, the silence a stark reminder of my isolation. Then came the letter from my dream college. An anonymous tip, they wrote, about concerning behavior. They needed to discuss my acceptance, to investigate accusations of me bullying a family member with a terminal illness before finalizing my enrollment. I knew, with every fiber of my being, it was Sasha. But how to prove it? She'd been so careful, so anonymous. Yet, she'd made one crucial mistake. The complaint contained specific phrases, turns of words she'd used before, unique to her. I recognized her writing style immediately, a cold wave of certainty washing over me. That single moment shifted everything. I decided to get creative, to fight fire with fire. I bought tiny voice recorders, small enough to be easily concealed, and hid them strategically around the house, behind picture frames, tucked under tables, anywhere she might let her guard down, anywhere she might speak freely, believing herself unheard. The recordings picked up more than I ever expected. Late at night, I'd lie in my bed, listening through the thin walls as Sasha chattered on the phone, laughing, her voice dripping with contempt as she described how gullible our parents were. She'd brag to her friends about getting my room, about ruining my college plans, punctuating each cruel revelation with sharp, delighted giggles. Sometimes, she'd even mimic my mother's worried voice, exaggerating it until her friends cackled on the other end. My hands, trembling with a mixture of fear and vindication, saved every single file to multiple cloud accounts, creating backup after backup. Each recording was meticulously labeled with the date and time, organized into folders that documented weeks of her calculated deception. But I needed someone who would actually listen, someone beyond my parents, who were too deep in denial. Their eyes would glaze over whenever I tried to bring up inconsistencies in Sasha's story. They'd change the subject or suddenly remember urgent errands whenever I mentioned her strange behavior. That's when I remembered Aunt Helen. She'd always been different, sharper, more observant. Even when we were kids, she'd caught Sasha in small lies at family gatherings, like claiming to have won a spelling bee at a school that didn't even have one. Helen lived 2 hours away, but maybe, just maybe, she'd help. I called her from a pay phone at school, a relic tucked behind the gymnasium, where no one would see me. The booth smelled of rust and old gum, the metal receiver cold against my ear as I fumbled with quarters, my hands shaking. Helen picked up on the third ring, her warm voice a lifeline in my drowning world. I poured out everything, words tumbling over each other like water breaking through a dam. She listened, silently, just breathing steadily on the other end, for a long, agonizing time. Finally, she said she'd suspected something was off. Sasha's cancer story kept shifting, from lymphoma to leukemia, to some rare, constantly changing form. Helen agreed to come that weekend, pretending it was just to support Sasha, but really, she wanted to see the evidence I collected. Her voice had that determined edge I remembered from when she'd helped me with math homework years ago. Finally, someone believed me. I hung up, a fragile hope blooming in my chest, a spring in my step that drew curious looks from passing students. That Friday, I came home to a sickening discovery. My recordings were gone. Every single device had vanished from its hiding spot. The drawer under my desk, empty. Dust outlines showed where they had been. The box in my closet, cleared out. Even the backup USB drives, hidden in an old shoe, were missing. Sasha was on the couch, calmly reading a celebrity gossip magazine, her legs tucked underneath her, as if nothing in the world was amiss. When I asked about the recorders, she didn't even glance up, her voice innocent, practiced. She didn't know what I was talking about. I still had the cloud backups, thankfully, but now I was paranoid. That night, fueled by a simmering rage and a desperate need for security, I changed all my passwords, setting up two-factor authentication on everything. I even created dummy accounts with fake evidence, just in case she managed to infiltrate those too. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I built layer after layer of digital protection, using password managers and security questions based on things only I would know. References to books Sasha had never read, places she'd never been. This was my last line of defense. Helen arrived Saturday morning, a casserole dish in one hand and a concerned expression on her face. She wore her good pearls, the ones reserved for important occasions, her gray hair freshly styled. She hugged Sasha, telling her how brave she was, her acting skills truly rivaling any performance I'd seen. Sasha ate it up, launching into a dramatic monologue about her treatment and how hard everything was, even managing to make her voice quaver at just the right moments. I watched from the kitchen, biting my tongue so hard I tasted copper, the metallic tang a stark contrast to the comforting smell of Helen's casserole, a smell of childhood that now felt alien and unreachable. Later, Helen, with an almost imperceptible wink, asked to see my room, offering to help me reorganize since I'd given it up for Sasha. It was a clever excuse, one that wouldn't raise suspicion. Once we were safely alone, the door shut behind us. I showed her everything on my phone. The recordings, the screenshots, the meticulously documented timeline of lies. Each piece of evidence was annotated with context, cross-referenced, undeniable. Her face grew darker with each revelation, her jaw tightening as she listened to Sasha's cruel laughter echoing from the phone. She had to sit down on my bed when she heard the part about Sasha planning to intercept my college acceptance letter. We spent an hour going through it all. Helen, with her sharp, legal mind, pointed out inconsistencies I'd missed. Sasha claiming chemo every Monday, but never being sick on Tuesdays. How all her medical documents had the same watermark pattern despite supposedly coming from different offices. She showed me how the fonts matched perfectly, the margins identical. She even noticed the medical terminology was subtly off, like someone had researched terms online rather than copying from authentic documents. Her years working at a law firm handling medical malpractice cases had trained her eye for authentic paperwork. Helen said she'd talk to my parents, but we needed to be strategic. If we came on too strong, they'd get defensive, shut down completely. She'd seen it before, how confrontation could backfire when people were so emotionally invested in a lie. She suggested waiting until dinner, when everyone was relaxed. I agreed, though waiting felt impossible, my stomach churning with anxiety. We spent the afternoon pretending everything was normal, helping Mom in the kitchen, listening to Dad's work stories. The tension in my chest felt like a physical weight, pressing down on every breath. At dinner, Sasha was in full performance mode. She pushed food around her plate, sighing dramatically about how the treatment had culled her appetite. She took exactly 3 tiny bites of chicken, cutting them into minuscule pieces for maximum effect. My mom, ever the doting parent, immediately offered to make her something else, jumping up from the table. Dad rubbed her shoulder, his voice thick with emotion, telling her she was so strong. The dining room felt suffocating with all the manufactured sympathy. Then, Helen began. Her voice was calm, conversational, like she was asking about the weather. She inquired about Sasha's treatment plan, which hospital she was using. Sasha gave vague answers about privacy, not wanting to burden everyone with details. Helen pushed a little more, mentioning she had a friend who was an oncologist who might be able to help. She even pulled out her phone, as if ready to make the connection right there. Sasha's eye twitched, but she quickly covered it by dabbing at fake tears. She appreciated the offer, she said, but her team was handling everything. When Helen asked for the oncologist's name to send a thank you card, Sasha suddenly announced she needed to use the bathroom, her chair scraping loudly against the floor as she pushed back. She walked slowly, playing up the weakness, one hand trailing along the wall for support. While she was gone, Helen looked at my parents. She asked, gently, if they'd actually gone to any appointments with Sasha. My mom admitted, sheepishly, twisting her napkin in her lap, that Sasha had insisted on being independent. Dad added that Sasha was protecting them from the harsh reality. His hands folded tightly on the table, his knuckles white with a tension he didn't even realize he was carrying. This is the insidious nature of manipulative deception within close relationships. It thrives on the emotional vulnerability and trust of loved ones. Sasha exploited her parents' deepest fears and their innate desire to protect their child, weaving a narrative that was emotionally compelling and difficult to question, even in the face of glaring inconsistencies. The parents' willingness to accept her narrative, even without objective evidence, highlights how powerful emotional investment can override rational thought, essentially turning them into unwitting participants in her scheme. Helen then pulled out her phone and, with a quiet solemnity, began to show them my evidence. At first, they didn't want to look, turning their heads away like children avoiding vegetables. But Helen insisted, going through each recording and screenshot methodically. She had them organized into a professional presentation, undeniable in its scope. My mom's face went white when she heard Sasha laughing about fooling them, her hand flying to her mouth, a guttural sound escaping her lips. Dad's expression shifted in the span of 30 seconds, from disbelief to horror to a simmering rage that made the air around him crackle. Sasha came back to find us all staring at her. The silence in the dining room was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. She immediately started crying, accusing us of ganging up on a cancer patient. When that didn't work, she escalated, claiming I'd faked the recordings with AI, then that I'd drugged her to make her say those things. Her lies became more desperate, more wild, each new excuse contradicting the last, a house of cards collapsing in real time. My dad stood up slowly, his chair creaking under the shift of his weight. He asked her, point blank, if she had cancer. His voice held the same tone from when I was little, when he'd caught me sneaking cookies, firm, unwavering, leaving no room for evasion. Sasha tried more tears, but he just repeated the question, his voice steady, steel-edged. Finally, she exploded. She screamed that we all loved my achievements more than her, that I'd stolen her parents' attention with my stupid college acceptance. Spit flew from her mouth as years of festering resentment poured out in a torrent. The truth, ugly and raw, came gushing forth. She admitted faking everything, but twisted it, claiming it was our fault for making her feel invisible. She'd spent years being the older sister, she raged, but I got all the praise for copying her. She even admitted that destroying my bike was the only time she'd felt powerful, her face contorting with years of suppressed rage. Then came the smaller things, the ones I'd never even suspected. Hiding my library books so I'd get fines, spreading embarrassing lies about me at school, deleting my essays from the family computer. Each revelation was another punch to the gut. My mom started sobbing, deep, wrenching sounds that shook her entire body. Dad had to sit back down, as if his legs had suddenly given out, gripping the edge of the table so tightly the wood groaned beneath his fingers. Helen, ever the pragmatist, recorded the entire confession on her phone, just in case Sasha tried to deny it later. I felt numb, detached, watching my family fall apart, like I was floating above the scene, observing strangers. The untouched food on the table seemed absurd, surreal, in the midst of such destruction. But Sasha wasn't done. She lunged at me, screaming that I'd ruined everything. Her nails caught my mom's arm when she tried to get between us. Red drops hit the white tablecloth, spreading like tiny, grotesque roses. Mom stared at her wrist, a look of pure incomprehension on her face. Dad grabbed Sasha, pulling her back. She thrashed, screaming how much she hated me, how I'd stolen her life by being born, how every achievement I had was just to make her look bad. Years of rage, primal and raw, erupted from her. The neighbor's dog, sensing the chaos, began barking through the walls. Helen, calm and collected, called 911, her legal training keeping her focused as she gave the address. The paramedics arrived, initially for my mom's arm, but they ended up taking Sasha too. She'd worked herself into such a violent state they were worried she might hurt herself. As they led her away, her screams echoed down our quiet street, blaming me, blaming me, blaming me. Porch lights flickered on as neighbors peered through curtains. The house felt hollow, eerily silent after the ambulance lights faded into the distance. Mom needed stitches and antibiotics, the doctor confirming the scratches were deep but would heal fine. Dad drove her home in silence, the only sound the hum of the engine. None of us knew what to say, the hospital bracelet on Mom's wrist catching the streetlight as we pulled into our driveway. That night, my parents sat me down. Their apologies were halting, laced with shame. They said they'd been so shocked by the cancer story, so terrified, that they never questioned it. They'd wanted to support their sick daughter. They confessed and ended up enabling her lies. Mom cried again when she talked about slapping me, her hand reaching out, gently touching my cheek. A gesture so different from that morning, tender and full of regret. I told them about all the things Sasha had done over the years, not to hurt them, but so they would understand this wasn't new. This wasn't an isolated incident. They were horrified to learn about the bike, the award ceremony. They'd had no idea how long this had been going on, each revelation hitting them like a physical blow. Dad kept shaking his head, muttering about signs he'd missed, chances he'd let slip by. We all agreed Sasha needed professional help. Real therapy, not the kind they'd forced on me. Dad called around, his notebook filling with names and numbers, insurance coverage, treatment approaches, success rates. He researched like his life depended on it, eventually finding a place that specialized in personality disorders, a facility with an opening the next week if Sasha agreed to go. Meanwhile, I had to fix my life. The college was still investigating that anonymous complaint. I sent them the recording of Sasha's confession, along with a detailed letter from Helen, explaining the situation and lending her professional credibility. I included the therapy notes from my coerced sessions, showing I was the victim, not the bully. Each document felt like a piece of my dignity being restored, an act of reclaiming my narrative. The admissions officer called personally, her voice full of apologies for the confusion, a palpable relief washing over me. School was harder to fix. Rumors don't die easily, especially in a small high school where gossip is currency. Some people believed me when I explained, their eyes widening with dawning comprehension, but others, cemented in their assumptions, thought I was still making excuses. I focused on my real friends, the ones who stuck by me, and tried to ignore the whispers in the hallway. It hurt, a deep ache of injustice, but I'd survived worse. My AP teachers, who had witnessed my dedication firsthand, were especially supportive. They were understanding when I explained about the laptop, even more so when Dad filed a police report and I showed them the documentation. They gave me extensions, and I spent weeks catching up on assignments, my desk lamp burning late into the night. My grades slowly recovered, but it was exhausting, each test and paper a mountain to climb. Coffee became my best friend, and the library staff knew me by name. Sasha came home after 3 days of observation. She was required to attend therapy twice a week. The therapist said she showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. It would take years of work to address, she warned us, setting realistic, albeit daunting, expectations. She gave us pamphlets about family dynamics and enabling behaviors, a quiet indictment of our past. Sasha moved back into her old room without apology, the silence between us a tangible wall. We avoided each other completely, creating invisible barriers in our shared spaces. When we passed in the hall, she'd look through me, as if I wasn't there. And I was fine with that. I'd given up on having a sister years ago. The house felt split into two separate worlds, existing uneasily under one roof. But she wasn't done trying to hurt me. I caught her in my room one day, going through my college paperwork. When I confronted her, she casually said she was just borrowing a pen. But I saw it. My acceptance letter, crumpled, as if she'd been squeezing it in a fit of impotent rage, the official seal wrinkled beyond repair. The violation of my space made my skin crawl. That night, I installed a lock on my door. My parents didn't object, understanding the necessity without me having to explain. They knew we needed boundaries while Sasha worked through her issues. Mom even helped me pick out a sturdy deadbolt from the hardware store, testing each one for strength. The click of that lock became the sound of safety, of protection. The next few months were tense. Sasha would have good days, seeming almost normal, laughing at TV shows, helping with dishes. Then she'd have setbacks, the anger flaring, the bitterness returning. Her therapist warned us, recovery wasn't linear. We had to be patient, but also protect ourselves. Family dinners became exercises in careful navigation, the silence often punctuated by forced small talk. I started keeping anything important, my laptop, documents, even sentimental items, in a safe each night. It felt extreme, like living in a fortress, but I couldn't risk another sabotage attempt. The safe gave me peace of mind, allowing me to focus on school. The combination was my birthday, a date Sasha had always resented. Even choosing those numbers felt like reclaiming something. College finally confirmed they were keeping my acceptance. The admissions board said they understood the situation and appreciated my honesty. They even offered resources for dealing with family trauma. I cried reading that email, relief washing over me in waves. My future was secure again, the path forward clear. Prom season arrived, and I let myself get excited. I found a beautiful dress on sale, a vibrant blue that made me feel alive. My friend Erin, sweet and unassuming, asked me to go as friends. It felt good to have something normal to look forward to, something untainted. I even caught myself humming while doing homework, old happiness creeping back in. The dress hung in my closet like a promise of one perfect night. The night of prom, I was doing my makeup, adding the finishing touches, when I heard a crash from my closet. My heart seized. I rushed over. My beautiful dress lay on the floor, soaked, covered in what looked and smelled unmistakably like bleach. The fabric was ruined, huge white splotches blooming across the blue material. Down the hall, Sasha's bathroom door clicked shut. The chemical smell burned my nose. I stood there in my slip, staring at the destroyed dress, feeling all the excitement drain away, replaced by a crushing wave of despair. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, numbly, I called Helen. She drove over, a silent, comforting presence, bringing her daughter's old prom dress. It was green instead of blue, but it fit perfectly. Helen did my hair while I tried not to cry, her hands gentle as she pinned each curl. She said I looked beautiful, and she meant it. She even had matching jewelry in her purse, like she'd known I'd need rescuing. At prom, nobody cared that my dress was different than planned. Erin and I danced until our feet hurt, under the twinkling lights and silver streamers that transformed the gym. For a few glorious hours, I forgot about Sasha, forgot about the chaos at home. I just got to be a normal teenager, celebrating with friends. We took dozens of photos, genuine smiles replacing the forced ones from family portraits. When I got home, Sasha was in the living room, waiting. She looked at the green dress, and her face fell, her disappointment palpable. I realized she'd been waiting to see me cry, to see her sabotage succeed. But when I smiled, a genuine, tired smile, and said I'd had an amazing night, she stormed off to her room, defeated. For once, her plan to hurt me had failed completely. The next week, Sasha's therapist called a family meeting. She revealed that Sasha had admitted to the dress incident and several other acts of sabotage. The therapist recommended a more intensive program, maybe residential treatment, where Sasha could focus on healing without the triggers of home. She explained that the current approach wasn't working fast enough. My parents were torn, their faces a mixture of fear and hope. They wanted to help Sasha, but the idea of sending her away, of acknowledging the depth of her illness, was terrifying. The therapist gently explained that sometimes distance was necessary for everyone to heal. She gave them brochures for several programs specializing in personality disorders, glossy pages filled with promises of recovery, testimonials from families who'd found peace through separation. That night, I heard my parents arguing, their voices muffled but clear through the walls. Mom wanted to try the residential program, convinced it was their only option. Dad, however, was racked with guilt, convinced they'd failed Sasha by not catching this earlier. They went back and forth, blaming each other, blaming themselves. I put on headphones, trying to focus on calculus problems, but their raised voices penetrated even through my music, blurring the numbers through my tears. Sasha must have heard them, too, because the next day, she announced she'd go to treatment. She said she was tired of being angry all the time. For the first time in years, she looked genuinely exhausted, not plotting, not manipulative, just bone-weary. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. The fight seemed to have gone out of her, replaced by something hollow, a quiet resignation. We drove her to the facility the following Monday. It was 3 hours away, nestled among peaceful mountains and sprawling gardens. The staff seemed kind, but firm, explaining the program would last at least 6 months, with family therapy sessions once a month. The building looked more like a retreat than a hospital, a quiet haven. Other families were saying goodbyes in the parking lot, each carrying their own heavy stories, their faces etched with a familiar mix of sadness and hope. Sasha hugged our parents goodbye, a brief, tight embrace, but ignored me. And I was okay with that. I didn't need a tearful reconciliation. I just needed her to get help and to leave me alone. As we drove away, watching the facility disappear in the rearview mirror, a profound lightness settled over me. A weight I hadn't realized I was carrying finally lifted. The mountains looked peaceful, vast, as if they could hold all our family's pain and somehow transform it. The house was peaceful without her. I moved back into my room properly, spreading out my things, my books, my artwork, without fear, without the constant vigilance. My parents and I had quiet dinners where we actually talked, not just about Sasha, but about our day, about life. Mom started asking about my day again, genuinely interested in my answers. We even played board games some nights, rediscovering how to be a family of three, a small, fragile, but real unit. I threw myself into senior year activities. I joined the yearbook committee, started tutoring underclassmen in math. My college acceptance was secure, and I could finally, truly, enjoy high school. Friends started hanging out again once the drama died down, the whispers fading into the background. My calendar filled with normal teenage activities, study groups, movie nights, college planning sessions. Life, for the first time in what felt like forever, became wonderfully, blessedly, ordinary. The first family therapy session was rough. The room smelled faintly of lavender and felt too small. We sat in a circle, the distance between us measured in more than feet, in years of hurt. Sasha had to acknowledge the harm she'd caused, reading from a list, her voice monotone, clearly unhappy about it. But the therapist, a kind but unyielding woman, said admitting wrongdoing was the first step, even if she didn't feel it yet. We went once a month, as required. Sometimes Sasha participated, sometimes she just glared, her eyes hard and unyielding. The therapist worked with all of us on boundaries and communication. My parents had to admit they'd enabled her behavior by not addressing it earlier, a painful but necessary truth. Each session peeled back layers of family dysfunction, revealing the raw nerves beneath. Mom cried a lot. Dad learned to express emotions beyond anger, his face softening, his voice less rigid. I learned to speak up for myself without guilt, my voice gaining strength. I started seeing my own therapist, too, to process everything, to untangle the knotted mess of fear and confusion. She helped me understand that Sasha's problems weren't my fault, that wanting a sister wasn't what caused this. It took months to really believe that, but eventually, I did. Her office became a safe space where I could finally exhale. Senior year flew by in a blur of activities and milestones. I got into the National Honor Society and won a scholarship for my essay about overcoming family challenges, a subtle nod to the journey I'd endured. My parents came to every ceremony, beaming with pride, their faces alight with a joy that felt genuine, unburdened. They'd learned to celebrate my achievements without guilt, without fear of Sasha's reaction. The auditorium lights felt warm on my face as I accepted each award, each accomplishment mine alone, no longer shadowed by Sasha's jealousy. Sasha slowly improved in treatment. Her letters home, at first terse and defensive, became less angry, more reflective. She started taking responsibility without blaming others. The therapist said she was making real progress, but warned us not to expect miracles. Recovery would be a lifelong journey, not a destination. But for the first time in my life, a fragile hope emerged that maybe someday, I'd have the sister I'd always wanted, even if that day was still far away. Graduation day arrived faster than expected. I woke early to iron my cap and gown, the fabric crisp under the hot metal. My parents were already in the kitchen, making my favorite breakfast, pancakes with strawberries, just like when I was little. Dad kept taking photos of everything, even my half-eaten breakfast, a precious record of a new kind of family joy. Mom fussed with my hair until I gently pushed her hands away, a small, loving gesture of independence. The ceremony was at 10 o'clock, but Dad, in his typical fashion, wanted good seats, so we left at 8 o'clock, the high school parking lot already filling with families carrying flowers and balloons. I found my friends near the gym entrance, and we took about 100 selfies, everyone saying we looked so grown up in our caps and gowns. During the ceremony, I spotted my parents in the third row. Mom was already crying, and we hadn't even started yet. Helen sat next to them, her camera ready, a familiar, supportive presence. When they called my name for the scholarship award, Dad hooped so loud everyone turned to look. I didn't even feel embarrassed, just proud, a quiet confidence settling in my bones. After getting my diploma, I found them in the crowd. A group hug turned into more crying from Mom. Helen handed me a card with a check inside for college expenses. I tried to give it back, but she insisted, said it was an investment in my future. Dad took more photos until my face hurt from smiling. We went to lunch at my favorite restaurant, a celebratory feast. Halfway through appetizers, Mom's phone rang. It was the treatment facility. Sasha wanted to talk to me. I hadn't heard her voice in 2 months. My parents looked at me expectantly, but didn't push. I took the phone outside, where it was quieter. "Congratulations on graduating," she said. Her voice sounded different, calmer, maybe less sharp around the edges. She asked about my college plans and, to my astonishment, actually listened to the answer. When I told her about the scholarship, she said, "Good job." Not sarcastically, not with an edge, just genuine. The conversation lasted 5 minutes, but it felt significant, a tiny shift in the earth beneath our feet. Summer passed in a blur of preparation. College shopping with Mom, who bought way too many shower caddies. Dad teaching me basic car maintenance in the driveway. Oil changes, tire pressure, jump-starting batteries. He made me practice everything twice, a meticulous tutor. Helen threw me a going-away party with all my favorite foods, a warmth surrounding me that I hadn't felt in years. The treatment facility called about a special family session before I left for school. They said Sasha had something important to share. We drove up on a Saturday, the mountains green with summer growth. The building looked less intimidating now, almost welcoming. Family members sat in the garden areas, talking quietly, a shared sense of healing in the air. In the session room, Sasha looked healthier. She'd gained weight. Her skin had color again, the hollow exhaustion replaced by a quiet strength. She read from a paper, her hands shaking slightly. It was an apology, a real one. She went through specific incidents. The bike, the laptop, the dress, acknowledging how they had hurt me, each memory carefully examined, unvarnished. She said she'd been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and borderline traits. That wasn't an excuse, she emphasized, but an explanation. She was learning to manage her emotions without hurting others. The therapist nodded encouragingly as she spoke. When she finished, we all sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. But I thanked her for the apology and said I hoped treatment kept helping. That was all I could give right then. The therapist said that was perfectly okay. Forgiveness couldn't be forced or rushed. Everyone had their own timeline for healing. We had lunch at a nearby cafe. Sasha came with supervision from a staff member, her presence still a fragile thing. She ordered soup and actually ate it, a small victory. We talked about safe topics, movies, the weather. When she asked about my roommate assignment, I showed her the email. She even said the girl seemed nice based on her Facebook profile, a mundane detail that felt monumental. The drive home was quiet, my parents exchanging looks in the front seat. Finally, Mom said they were proud of how I handled myself, that I'd shown maturity beyond my years. Dad added that I didn't owe Sasha anything, that my feelings were valid, whatever they were. 2 weeks before college, I was packing when I found something strange. A small, wrapped box in my desk drawer. Inside was a necklace with my birthstone. The receipt showed Sasha had ordered it from the treatment facility's craft program. A tiny note said, "For your new beginning." I stared at it for a long time, the polished stone cool against my palm. I didn't wear it, but I did pack it. Maybe someday I would, maybe not. But the gesture meant something, even if I wasn't ready to accept it fully. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and tucked it into my jewelry box. Progress, I realized, came in small, often unexpected, steps. Move-in day was chaos. Dad insisted on carrying everything himself until his back started hurting. Mom reorganized my dorm room 3 times, much to the amusement of my roommate, Kimberly, and her parents. By evening, our room looked like a Bed Bath & Beyond exploded, but it felt like home. Saying goodbye was harder than expected. Mom ugly cried in the parking lot. Dad kept clearing his throat and checking the car tires, his stoic facade cracking. I promised to call every week and text daily. Helen had already sent a care package that arrived before I did, cookies and tea, and a note saying she was proud. College was everything I'd hoped for. Hard classes, but interesting ones. Late-night study sessions fueled by pizza. My roommate became a close friend after we bonded over terrible dining hall food. I joined the running club, making more friends. No one knew about my family drama, and that felt like freedom, a boundless, exhilarating sense of liberation. The first family therapy session I missed felt weird. Mom called afterward to fill me in. Sasha was doing well, taking responsibility without prompting. She'd even started helping younger residents with their initial adjustments. The therapist called it significant progress. I was glad, genuinely glad, but also relieved to be far away. I came home for Thanksgiving break. The house felt different, calmer. My parents had redecorated some rooms and started hosting game nights with friends. They looked happier, lighter, like they'd been holding their breath for years and finally exhaled. Mom cooked enough food for 20 people. Sasha was allowed a supervised home visit for Thanksgiving dinner. She looked nervous walking through the door, her eyes darting around. We all sat at the table like strangers pretending to be family, but gradually, conversation started. She asked about my classes, seemed genuinely interested in my biology major, no competitive comments, no put-downs. After dinner, she helped clear plates without being asked. When Mom brought out pie, Sasha asked if she could say something. She thanked us for not giving up on her, said she knew she'd put us through hell, that she was committed to being better, even though it was hard work. Dad reached over and squeezed her hand, a rare gesture of affection. She went back to treatment that night, but the visit felt like progress. I didn't hug her goodbye, but I did wave from the porch. Small steps. The therapist had said healing wasn't linear. There would be good days and bad days, but at least we were moving forward. Winter break brought more changes. Sasha completed the first phase of treatment and moved to a transitional housing program. She got a part-time job at a bookstore, started taking community college classes online. The structure seemed to help her. She had to follow rules, meet expectations. We had another family session where the therapist talked about reintegration. Sasha wouldn't move home right away, maybe not ever, but she could visit more often, have dinner once a week, attend family events with notice. Everyone needed boundaries to feel safe. The therapist helped us write them down, explicit and clear. I went back to college feeling cautiously optimistic. My parents visited for Parents' Weekend and met all my friends. Mom embarrassed me by taking photos of everything, including my messy dorm room. Dad wore my college sweatshirt everywhere. They looked happy, really happy, not forcing it anymore. Spring semester flew by. I made Dean's List and got invited to join the honors program. My parents framed the letter, a symbol of their pride. Helen sent congratulations flowers. Even Sasha texted, saying she was proud. Each achievement felt fully mine now, no shadow hanging over it, no fear of retaliation. I came home for spring break to find Sasha had visited several times. My parents said dinners were going well. She was taking accountability in therapy, working on emotional regulation. The bookstore manager liked her work ethic. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Mom kept her voice neutral when sharing updates, a testament to her new understanding of healthy communication. We had dinner together that Wednesday. Sasha asked about my summer plans, and I told her about my research internship. She said that sounded impressive and asked questions about the project, real questions, not looking for weaknesses to exploit. When I mentioned being nervous, she said I'd do great, a genuine encouragement that warmed me. The meal ended without drama. She helped load the dishwasher and thanked Mom for cooking, then said goodbye without making it weird. After she left, my parents looked at me expectantly. I said it was fine, and it was. Not great, but not terrible. Just fine. Sometimes, fine was enough. Summer brought more stability. I threw myself into research and loved every minute. My parents visited the lab and tried, bless them, to understand my project about protein folding. Sasha continued therapy and kept her job. We had family dinners every other week. Conversation got easier with practice. One night, she asked if we could talk privately. We sat on the back porch, like we used to as kids, the air heavy with unspoken history. She said she knew she'd stolen years from me, that she couldn't give them back, but wanted to do better going forward. I told her I appreciated that, but trust would take time, maybe forever. She said she understood. Before sophomore year started, we had a final family session. The therapist said Sasha had made remarkable progress, but would need ongoing support. She'd learned to recognize her triggers and manage reactions. The personality disorder would always be there, she explained, but she could control how it affected others. Everyone had worked hard to get here. I went back to college feeling settled. My family wasn't perfect, but it was healing. Sasha texted occasionally with normal stuff. Songs she liked, books she'd read. I responded when I felt like it. No pressure either way. We were finding a new rhythm that worked for everyone. Sophomore year brought new challenges and opportunities. I declared my major officially and started research with a professor. My parents called weekly with updates. Sasha was taking more classes and doing well. She'd made some friends in her therapy group, baby steps toward a normal life. When I came home for winter break, Sasha had her own apartment, a studio near the bookstore. She invited us over for dinner and actually cooked. The pasta was overcooked, but no one complained. She showed us her space with obvious pride, everything neat and organized, a fresh start made visible. We exchanged Christmas presents awkwardly. She got me a gift card to my favorite store, safe and practical. I got her a journal for therapy work, also safe, but we were trying. That counted for something. Mom took photos of us sitting on the couch, not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. The rest of break passed peacefully. Family dinners happened without incident. Sasha came to my high school friend's party and behaved normally. She even laughed at Aaron's terrible jokes. When someone asked about our relationship, we both said it was complicated but improving. That felt honest. I helped her move some furniture one afternoon, just the two of us in her apartment. She put on music, and we worked without much talking. When we finished, she made tea, and we sat on her new couch. She said she was grateful I was giving her a chance, that she knew she didn't deserve it, but appreciated it anyway. I told her about my college friends and classes. She listened without interrupting or comparing. When I mentioned struggling with organic chemistry, she offered to help. Turns out she'd taken it at community college and done well. We spent an hour going over my notes. She was patient and explained things clearly, breaking down complex concepts into digestible pieces. That night, I told my parents about the tutoring. They exchanged surprised looks. Mom said that was wonderful. Dad reminded me to maintain boundaries. I said I knew, but maybe boundaries could shift slowly, include more space for connection if everyone stayed healthy. The therapist had said flexibility was important. This gradual shift in our relationship, moving from mere tolerance to active, if tentative, support, is a powerful example of how reconciliation within deeply fractured family systems is less about instantaneous forgiveness and more about rebuilding trust through consistent, verifiable behavioral change. It highlights the long and arduous process of relearning how to interact, where each positive interaction becomes a small brick in the foundation of a new, healthier connection. Spring semester started with new energy. Sasha and I texted about chemistry homework. She sent helpful videos and practice problems. My grade improved from a C to a B+. I thanked her, and she said helping me felt good, like she was contributing something positive. For once, we developed a routine, weekly texts about school, monthly video calls to review difficult concepts. She never pushed for more contact than I offered. When I didn't respond for a few days, she didn't guilt trip, just waited until I was ready. The respect for boundaries felt significant. By the time sophomore year ended, our relationship had found steady ground. Not close, not yet, but functional. We could share space without tension, have conversations without hidden agendas. She came to my academic awards ceremony and clapped genuinely. No scene, no drama, just support. That summer, I studied abroad in Spain. Sasha helped me pack and gave advice about traveling. She'd done a semester abroad herself before everything fell apart, and her tips about homestays and culture shock proved genuinely helpful. We hugged goodbye at the airport, a brief but real embrace. Mom cried happy tears. I sent postcards home to everyone, including Sasha. She saved them in a box, she told me later. When I got back, she wanted to hear stories, see photos. She asked questions about the research I'd done there, remembered details from previous conversations, acting like a normal sister for once. Junior year arrived with graduate school applications looming. Sasha offered to proofread my personal statements. I hesitated, a flicker of old fear, but agreed. She gave thoughtful feedback without trying to sabotage anything, even caught some typos I'd missed. When I got interviews, she helped me practice. Constructive and supportive. The years of therapy had changed her, not into a perfect person, but someone who could function without destroying others. She still struggled with jealousy sometimes. I'd see flashes of the old Sasha when I shared good news, a tightening around her eyes, but she'd catch herself and apologize, a stark difference from the past. Real work on real change. When acceptance letters started arriving, she was genuinely excited for me. No fake cancer diagnosis or mysterious illnesses, just congratulations and questions about which program I'd choose. She even offered to help me move when the time came. I said we'd see, but appreciated the offer. Senior year flew by in preparation for the future. Sasha came to graduation without making it about her. She sat with my parents, cheered at appropriate times, took photos when asked, and gave me a card with a heartfelt message about being proud of my accomplishments. And I actually believed she meant it. That summer, we spent more time together than we had in years. She helped me apartment hunt in my new city, drove me to IKEA for furniture, assembled bookcases without complaining. We even laughed at some points, not forced or careful laughter, just natural reactions to genuinely funny moments. The night before I moved, she asked if we could be real sisters someday. Not now, but eventually. When enough time had passed and trust was rebuilt, I said maybe. That I wanted to believe it was possible, but couldn't promise anything. She said that was fair, more than she deserved, really. We loaded the moving truck together, my parents emotional but trying to hide it. Sasha, practical and helpful. When everything was packed, she handed me a small gift, a framed photo of us as kids, before everything went wrong. Both of us grinning at the camera. Sisters who didn't know what was coming. I hung it in my new apartment, not prominently, but visible. A reminder that people could change, that families could heal even after deep wounds, that forgiveness was possible, even if it took years to arrive. The photo faced my desk, where I'd see it while studying, a testament to two little girls who deserved better than they got. Sasha and I text regularly now, not daily, but consistently. She tells me about her job and classes. I share stories from graduate school. We're building something new on the ashes of what was destroyed. It's fragile and imperfect, but it's ours. Maybe that's enough for now. Looking back, I can see how far we've all come. From that horrible party where I pulled off her bald cap, to now, years of therapy and work and pain, but also growth. My parents learning to see clearly, to set boundaries. Sasha learning to live without destroying, to manage the complex landscape of her own mind. Me learning to protect myself while staying open to the possibility of connection. We're not the family we could have been, too much damage for that. But we're the family we chose to become. Scarred, but healing. Careful, but hopeful. Taking it one day at a time, because that's all anyone can do. And for now, that's enough. Considering the profound impact of Sasha's actions and the lengthy, arduous process of her recovery and the family's healing, at what point, if any, do you believe the victim of such prolonged manipulation and abuse truly owes their abuser a second chance, or even a pathway to full forgiveness?